Like clockwork, it's that time of year again. A time where there's a chill in the air, a changing of the leaves, and the darker nights draw ever closer. Yes, it's Halloween, and this year I'll be giving you a fantastic grab bag of Halloween-themed goodness, full of tricks and treats and strangeness. And kicking off this spooky season, I've decided to go a bit extra, covering a film on this channel that's quite possibly the most obscure movie I've spoken about to date. With only 35 ratings on IMDb at the time of recording, 1990's Franky and His Pals is seemingly an all-but-forgotten SOV comedy horror. And that fact's surprising to me because this is arguably one of the more solid SOV efforts that I've encountered on my travels. Though, there may be a few reasons as to why this film isn't quite as famous as it should be. The film follows, well, Franky and his pals, as we open with two gravediggers who set the scene. They allege that decades, possibly centuries prior, Frankenstein and some of his friends were driven up into the mountains where they sought refuge in a cave. There was a rock slide and the monsters became trapped inside, never to be heard from again. The gravediggers also clarify that they're near the town of French Gulch, a town known for its abundance of gold. Though, at this time it seems their fortunes have run out, as during a town community meeting it's revealed the town itself is in serious debt and that, unless they can rustle up the cash, it'll be taken over by the banks in 10 days. It's here that we cut to the inside of the cave, and it turns out that ever since the rock slide, Franky and his friends have all been living a pretty peaceful life in the cave system, living off old mining supplies and playing card games. Obviously we know Frankenstein, but joining him in the cave is the Wolfman, known as Wolfie, Count Dracula, Drac for short, the Mummy and his little serpent buddy Apophis, and a horny hunchback by the name of Humper. Guess what he likes to do? That's right, shake his bells at people. Anyway, it's another day for the monsters and they decide to play a game of poker, during which Humper, down to his last chips, offers a treasure map leading to the hidden gold of French Gulch. The monsters don't bat an eye, but when Franky wins the pot, the gang become quite intrigued about the map and the gold and begin to plan for a bit of an expedition. That is, until they remember that they're still trapped, which prompts Franky to eat a crap ton of tinned baked beans, fart, and the fart power is so strong it blows a hole clean through the cave walls, freeing the monsters. They wander down to the graveyard and scare the gravediggers away before heading to a nearby parked car where a young couple are getting fresh. They surround the car and Humper starts gyrating, which freaks the couple out and they speed off, leaving the monsters to hobble into town by themselves. And for some reason, they chose here to play the first of many music videos where they recap the last 10 to 15 minutes or so of the movie in rap format. Anyway, the gang get into town and it turns out they've landed just at the right time as a masquerade party is about to take place and the guys are more than dressed for the occasion. Blending in seamlessly, they approach a local boarding house, pub, hotel, meeting hall, I don't know. Basically, they had outside access to one location, so this thing's a TARDIS. They go in and immediately ask for the gold, but the guys working at the place think they're part of an act and offer them rooms for the night, which the gang accept. And from there, basically, comedy shenanigans ensue for the rest of the runtime, as Humper gets caught up and beaten up in several questionably molesty scenarios. Franky and Drac try to clear out the party ASAP so they can spy for the gold, and Wolfie meets his soulmate in the form of a tutu-wearing gent by the name of Clover. It's thrills, chills, and questionably tonal skills from start to finish. In a near 90-minute runaround that would even give the Stooges a run for their money, will Franky and co find the gold? Will Clover and Wolfie declare their feelings for each other? And just who is the mysterious scientist we keep periodically checking in on, and what exactly is he going to do with his prototype time machine? Well, all this and more will be answered if you're lucky enough to hunt down an elusive copy of Franky and Pals. And in a rather refreshing turn of events, this film's a bit of an open and shut case, at least in my opinion, as to why it didn't quite break out of the obscure realms that it inhabits. And at least half of the blame for it is unfortunately down to the script. You see, this film's script is kind of all over the place. It's a fundamental issue because, well, it doesn't seem to know or understand who its target audience is, and as such it pretty much manages to turn off all demographics because it tries to be all-encompassing. I should probably explain. The film's humour, tone, style and pacing from a script perspective is absolutely in line with a kids' film from that time. Like, Basically, this film is a kids' movie. That's the level of intelligence it's working on, the level of storytelling, the vibe. It's for kids. Only, it's not for kids, because for some reason they filled the thing with pretty hard curse words, no F-bombs but a hell of a lot of shits and bastards. There's a lot of sex references, partial nudity and molestation, and it's bordering dangerously on very questionable levels of homophobia in places. So unless you're a liberal parent, in which case a genuine and sincere good for you, little Timmy isn't seeing this anytime soon. But because the humour is so kid-friendly, I think it would irritate or annoy older people for just how base level the whole thing is. So that's your kids and people over 55 off the table. Teens aren't going to watch this because it's cringy as hell in places, and because the humour's so babyish, I just can't see a group of 13 to 17-year-olds gathering round to really get into this movie, aside from maybe to cop an eye at the partial nudity. I don't think this would particularly go down well with the 30 to 50 crowd because of just how juvenile it is, and for how scattershot the whole thing feels, though that demo is the closest I'd pin this movie towards. The director, producer and writer of the movie, Gerald Cormier, told the cast and crew that his main vision for an intended audience for this movie were places in Asia like Japan or South Korea. Because at the time, apparently cheesy American movies with toilet humour and women in bikinis were very vogue, and he had visions of basically selling the film outside of the country and living off endless Asian royalties. What he carefully forgot with this plan, however, is that he actually had to have connections with those foreign markets in order to sell to those foreign markets, and that in places like Japan, they do like American culture, but at that time the volume of swearing would have been considered a bit of a turn-off. They like daft, weird stuff, and American swearing is kind of seen and played as a bit stereotypical. It means that essentially Gerald here made a film that no one could really fully love. Hell, even after giving it some serious, sincere thought, the best demo I could come up with for this movie were stoners aged 25 to 40 who loved mid-80s MTV, especially around Halloween when they'd do things like an Elvira takeover, or they'd play old 50s B-movies in the early hours. Well, that and people like me who study things like this to figure out how they worked, why they broke, and just why in general. And unfortunately, that isn't really enough people to establish a multi-picture horror comedy franchise. Broadly speaking, the film is very enjoyable. I like the humour level. It reminded me very much of Beavis and Butthead. In fact, at one point Dracula calls Frankenstein a fart knocker, and the moment that happened I knew I was in for a hell of a ride with this one, and it didn't disappoint in that regard. The pacing's a little sticky, honestly. The first act is absolutely fine, really solid in fact. It's light, it introduces the characters decently, sets the scene and gets things running, but from the second act onwards we do kind of encounter a bit of a problem. You see, the second act opens strong by doing some pretty solid physical gags, it's all still light-hearted fun, it's decent. But after a while you realise that they've started repeating gags. Then the weird scenes with Humper grabbing women's arses, gyrating and looking at panty shots start, and then Clover comes in and the gay stereotypes start up, and by the time the third act's underway, not only have these gags been done 2 to 3 times each, but even the more questionable humour has started repeating itself as well. There's literally a scene where the monsters all go into their hotel and accidentally go into 2 to 3 wrong rooms. The first time that happens, it was kind of funny. Not gut-splitting, but I chuckled a little bit. Not 10 minutes later, they run the exact same gag almost word for word, but just with Humper. And that was when I got a shiver up my spine as I realised, this film's already burnt through all its gags. And lo and behold, barring 1 or 2 new little funny bits dribbed and drabbed across the third act, it wears the gags it knows well and truly into the ground before the credits are out. The gold plot drifts further and further away from the front and centre until in the last 10 minutes or so they realise they even have a main plot, and then they rush resolve it in a not particularly interesting way before the film veers off in a totally unexpected direction that is completely disconnected from the rest of the film, and then it just sort of ends, teasing a sequel that, up until now, has never materialised. One thing I did think was kinda neat, however, is they break up these weird repetitive penis and fart jokes with music videos. They kind of act as nice little palate cleansers periodically, popping up to help refresh the viewer and maintain a kind of 60s surf rock throwback tone. They were really well handled and really helped win me back when the film started to get a little dry. Equally, the dialogue, which, while repetitive, was expertly handled by the cast and seemed almost tailored to the respective roles. There's some really solid one-liners here, and while it's crass at times, it's well-timed crassness, which more than scratched an itch for me, honestly. Because of this, it leaves us with a script that's sloppily paced, repetitive, has a strong opening act, but then quickly loses control of the horse by the middle of the second act, and kind of feels more like an extended pilot to a TV series than an actual full-blown cinematic feature. I absolutely appreciate a lot of the tone and vibe this film's going for. I'll always say a well-handled and timed fart joke will beat any ultra-nuanced multi-layer gag any day, and I enjoyed it enough that I'd happily rewatch this thing again. But I have to be honest here when I say that it's not a good script. It's got 30 minutes worth of ideas that's dragged out to almost 90 by any means necessary, and I think it's a weaker work for having done that. The script was written and directed by Gerald Cormier, with co-writing duties falling to Al Kuna. Gerald has limited experience in the industry, with 5 credits to his name, mainly as a producer. In 1973, he produced and wrote the basic story for a film called Terror Circus, which he used heavily as a levy to help secure funding for Franky and to convince the cast to take part in the production, as the film had apparently played on TV in California throughout the 80s. Franky and his pals was his only stab at directing and his last writing credit. The cast at one time recounted how Gerald spent a number of years trying to find distribution for the film before things went quiet. He sadly passed away in late December of 2017. And as for Al, this was his only writing credit and he hasn't been seen again since. On the direction front, I think I can honestly say that this is one of the best looking SOV movies in my collection. Gerald has really tied the whole thing together, working closely with all aspects of the cast and crew to deliver a very professional looking product that honestly wouldn't look out of place as a TV movie. Almost all elements of the production are worked tightly together to produce a highly polished and even more highly stylized vision that honestly really helps to save the movie when it's floundering a bit. And only helping matters further was a highly willing cast who were keen to impress and pretty much up for anything. Gerald worked very closely with them on this production to help get the tone on delivery and animation perfect. And it really shows here. The gags our cast are spouting may not be gold standard, but you better believe that in that moment they were giving it their all and being expertly guided through those sequences. And it makes for a largely delightful time. I enjoyed it. Or at least I found it really quite refreshing to see a cast just having fun, getting on and putting a lot of positive energy into a film that needed every boost it could get. The Cine on this thing is pretty decent too. If I didn't know it was an independent production, I'd have put good money on this thing being shot by a local syndicated TV station. It's colourful, well considered in its composition and arrangement of shot types, it isn't afraid to experiment, and they utilise rudimentary early video effects, with bizarre but fun results. The one or two times they do accidentally create continuity issues, they turn it into their advantage by breaking the fourth wall to acknowledge their mistakes in a fun and humorous way. In fact, barring a couple of instances of ropey day-for-night shooting, I honestly think this thing looks great. It's playfully arranged and has a very decent editor on hand who clearly gets the assignment, and I will more than happily champion this film's looks. Performance-wise, the joy this cast is having while filming is palpable. All our main cast were good friends and had been for years. They'd all worked with each other on various theatre productions, and this was the first movie that any of them had worked on. And if you've known actors, and I have known many an actor in my time, you'll know as well as I do that there's a certain level of unbridled excitement that these people experience when they're given their first professional crack at the big time. Especially when they're being briefed that they'll essentially be megastars in Asia within 12 months. And that energy permeates the entire film's runtime wonderfully. Obviously the big players here are Eric Weathersby as Franky and Don Owen as Drac, who are just utter delights across the majority of the runtime, playing an almost vaudevillian-era style take on the characters, having playful back and forths and the kind of charismatic charm that you just really didn't see in movies at that time. I loved them, and their dedication to the roles really helped cement a lot of goodwill towards the film across the runtime. If you only see this film for one thing, it's the performances these guys put out there. But credit also has to go to Wilson Smith as Wolfie. I think he's a really rather understated character in this who gets some of the more interesting gags across the runtime, but also gets the opportunity to play a softer, more gentle aspect to the character with his relationship with Clover. While this film does delve into stereotyping and the occasional very mild slur, the relationship between Wolfie and Clover seems quite sincere, honestly. And I found that actually quite unique given how easy it would have been to just full-on camp it up between the two of them. I thought it was nice and, well, I can't really say it's progressive, but it was nice to see that kind of diversity played with sincerity at times for a change. What did disappoint me a bit was how the script basically more or less abandoned Richard Sumner as the mummy. He gets very little, almost nothing really, to do here, and just kind of fills in with the odd visual gag, or to give a straight man routine to the puppet Apophis. This isn't the first time I've seen a comic attempt at a monster movie leave one of the monsters by the wayside. The Halloween That Almost Wasn't did exactly the same thing, but it is disheartening to think that there was scope to do something interesting with that character, and instead they just kind of pissed the time away with groping and pee gags. The human cast too aren't exactly stunning. Most of the non-monster players here are basically almost avatars. They don't do much, they only answer in the affirmative or the negative, their emotional range never really rises above neutral, even when threatened with a killer fart. I don't know, it's the one aspect of the cast direction that kind of felt a bit of a letdown. And I can't quite decide if it's just that they weren't told to emote all that much, or if it's because the monsters emote so much. But yeah, they were kind of bland, and I felt like they could have brought a whole new level to proceedings with just a little bit more of a push. And finally, the soundtrack. And for the majority of this movie, we're treated to various miscellaneous musicians that make up the Franky and His Pals Party Band. And their sounds kind of like a cross between 50s rock, surf rock, and vintage 70s stuff. It's very fitting for this movie and seemingly fits the tone the film's running for perfectly. It's not overbearing, it's used where it's needed to, and barring the awful Franky rap in the first 10 to 15 minutes, for the most part, it's passably okay. Which is about all you can ask really at this point. Franky and his pals pretty much hit a snag right out of the gate when at a gala premiere to try and secure funding for distribution, almost no one signed up. Eventually, the film was released to video stores on a super limited distribution, we're talking a handful of states, not even a national release, via VHS by Shasta Video Distribution on behalf of Shasta Motion Pictures in 1991. And pretty much after that, the film died a quick and painless death. It pretty much remained a total oddity, only remembered by a very small number of people until those fabulous folks at Intervision got their hands on the rights and reissued the film on DVD in 2020, marking nearly 30 years since its initial release and its first official countrywide release to boot. It was limited to 1,000 copies, which sold out pretty quickly, too quickly for me to nab a copy at the time, but in recent years they have reissued a non-limited edition in small numbers, and a decent number of them have started to appear on eBay for a reasonable price. So I'd say if you're gonna grab a copy, go grab one now, because I have no idea how long this thing's going to be affordable for, and this is absolutely a movie you don't want to miss. The release itself is wonderful. The film's presented from the best surviving materials, basically the original master tape is considered long missing, so what's presented here is one of the few commercial copies ever made available. Nonetheless, the picture quality still looks great. There's a raft of extras too, which is fantastic, including an audio commentary, interviews with the actors who played Franky, Humper and Clover, a music video featuring Franky and his pals, and a mini-doc on the musicians who helped to score this. It's a pretty comprehensive set, and a lot more than I could have ever have asked for, honestly. All in all, Franky and His Pals is a romp and a half, a campy, over-the-top, sometimes cheesy, sometimes cringy kids movie with ass shots and swearing. I said it earlier in the review, but if you like stuff like Beavis and Butthead or have a real nostalgia for that period of time when MTV was alternative, weird, wacky and over the top, you need this movie in your life. It's super corny and it's guaranteed to make your Halloween movie marathon go off with a bang.